The moment Nora stepped into the grand restaurant, her heart froze like shattered glass. The chandeliers glittered above her as if mocking her, the polished floor reflected her every doubt, and the hushed murmurs of elegant diners seemed to whisper, "You don't belong here." Her fingers tightened around her daughter Lily's tiny hand, the only anchor keeping her from running out the door. She had promised her best friend she would try this blind date, promised herself she would at least try to move forward, and promised Lily that mommy wasn't afraid of life anymore. But promises break easily when memories still bleed, and Nora could still hear the last words her ex-husband screamed at her before disappearing with no warning, no apology, and no goodbye. All she had been left with was the paper that said he didn't want custody, didn't want responsibility, didn't want anything to do with their daughter, or her. If you believe in second chances, kindness, and that life can surprise us when we least expect it, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe for more life-changing stories. Nora had spent 3 years living quietly in a small rental house in Denver, working double shifts at the design studio, juggling part-time freelance gigs on the side, and raising Lily as best she could. Most days, she thought she was doing okay. Then there were nights when she cried silently, staring at unpaid bills, wondering if she was failing at motherhood. Therapists told her to try socializing, coworkers told her to start dating, but every time she tried, she was met with disappointment. Some men smiled at her until they saw Lily in the picture, others pretended to care until they asked why she didn't want more kids, as if Lily was a burden, a mistake. That was why she agreed to tonight's blind date, only because the man she was supposed to meet was a single parent too. But she had already decided she would stay no longer than 20 minutes. If he didn't show any sign of respect for Lily, she would pick her daughter up and leave without hesitation. The room was alive with warmth and comfort, and Lily seemed instantly drawn to the glowing chandeliers and soft jazz music. The little girl's golden curls bounced with each step, and she tugged on Nora's hand excitedly, whispering about how the tables looked like princess castles and the waiters walked like dancing penguins. Nora laughed gently, trying to ease her own nerves, but she was too busy scanning faces, searching for the man she was supposed to meet. She didn't know what he looked like, only that his name was Ethan and he was a single father who worked as a CEO of something. Her friend had spoken highly of him, saying he was surprisingly humble, even though he was successful beyond imagination. But Nora didn't believe in fairy tales anymore. Success usually meant arrogance, and humility was just a smile pasted over indifference. Then Lily stopped mid-step. The little girl let go of her mother's hand, eyes wide, breath held in a tiny gasp. She pointed toward the back corner of the restaurant where a sharply dressed man in a navy suit sat across from a small boy. The man, tall and broad, with tired eyes set in a handsome face, cut a steak into neat pieces while the boy chattered animatedly beside him. The child wore little loafers, navy trousers, and a vest that looked like something straight out of a magazine photo shoot. His hair was neatly combed, and his cheeks were rosy with excitement. He was the perfect image of a life Nora could never afford, one filled with private schools, handmade toys, and vacations to places with beautiful ocean views. But that wasn't what caught Lily's attention. The boy had dropped his fork, and before the man could react, the tiny hand reached toward a stray napkin on the table. The boy leaned over clumsily, clearly about to fall off the chair, and the man moved with lightning speed. He caught his son by the waist, steadied him, and pressed a gentle kiss on his head. The tenderness of the gesture was so unexpected it made Nora's chest ache. The man didn't frown, didn't scold, didn't force his child to sit still. He simply smiled at him, a smile that spilled warmth like sunlight through winter windows. Lily tugged on Nora's arm and said in a firm, innocent whisper that carried louder than expected, "Mom, let's go. He looks like a good daddy." And before Nora could stop her, the little girl marched across the restaurant floor, dragging her mother behind her like a determined little commander. Nora's cheeks burned with embarrassment. What would she even say? How would she apologize? But Lily didn't care about adult anxieties or polite boundaries. She only saw sincerity where others saw power, only noticed kindness where adults obsessed over status. The man's head turned at the sound of small footsteps, and his eyes softened immediately. Lily was pointing at the little boy and giggling shyly, and the boy grinned back. Nora stood helplessly, wishing she could explain, excuse, apologize, or disappear entirely. She thought the man would be annoyed, maybe irritated at the interruption. Instead, he looked at her, and she saw the most unexpected thing in his eyes, not judgment, not amusement, but recognition. It was as though he understood instantly what she was going through. The man straightened slowly, set down his fork, and greeted her not with rehearsed courtesy but the quiet respect of someone who had lived through storms themselves. His son bounced in his seat and waved at Lily, inviting her closer. And that was the moment Nora realized she had no idea what to do. She wanted to apologize and run away, but she also didn't want to ruin the pure happiness dancing in Lily's eyes. The waiter approached and asked Nora if she was looking for someone, and she whispered the man's name almost shyly, as if afraid the sound of it might shatter whatever spell the moment had cast. Ethan. The waiter smiled knowingly and gestured toward the man at the table. Nora's heart hammered against her ribs. This CEO wasn't just a stranger, he was the man she was here to meet. She nearly laughed from shock. He wasn't what she expected. CEOs in her mind were stoic, cold, distant like carved marble statues. Instead, Ethan sat there in a fitted charcoal suit, tie loosened at the collar, hair slightly messy like he'd been running after his son earlier, wearing the tired but real smile that only devoted parents wear. He invited Nora and Lily to sit. Nora hesitated, unsure if she could risk exposing her broken heart to another person who might walk away. But Lily had already climbed onto the seat beside the boy, who proudly showed her how to make funny shapes from bread crumbs. The two of them laughed together before Nora even managed to pull out her chair. Ethan listened when Nora told him she was nervous. He listened when her voice cracked describing how her ex-husband left. He listened when she confessed she didn't know how to start over. And in between occasional interruptions by the children, who seemed to be forming their own bond through giggles and imaginary games, the two adults shared stories of how they had been forced to grow up too early. Ethan told her he had lost his wife to illness when their son was barely a year old, and he had spent the next few years trying to fill both parental roles while managing a company that threatened to consume his sanity. He didn't boast about his success. He barely mentioned it at all. Instead, he talked about the fear of being enough. The fear of a child growing up resenting you. The fear of being judged every time he walked into a room with a toddler on his hip. Nora thought she would cry, but she didn't. Instead, she felt something even more unexpected, relief. She wasn't alone. Their struggles were different, but the loneliness was the same. The restaurant staff greeted Ethan with obvious respect, but not because of his wealth. He thanked each waiter by name, nodded to the hostess kindly, and spoke with a familiarity that suggested he treated people like humans, not employees. Nora watched the way he wiped his son's mouth gently after dessert, the way he leaned down to tie the shoelaces that had undone beneath little feet, the way he smiled as if simply being a father outweighed any shareholder expectation or corporate board meeting. The date that was meant to last 20 minutes stretched into 2 hours. The children fell asleep in their chairs like tiny angels, their heads resting against each other. Ethan offered to walk Nora to her car, and the look she gave him was hesitant but trusting. Outside, the air was cold, and the breath of their words formed clouds that drifted into the starless sky. Nora thanked him for the evening, expecting him to say goodbye. Instead, he knelt gently to tuck Lily's coat around her. It wasn't romantic, it was reverent. The weeks that followed were slow and cautious. They met at parks, coffee shops, little bookstores that Lily loved. Ethan didn't rush anything. He never pressured. He asked questions about Nora's ambitions, listened to her dreams, and helped her believe she was more than just a mother surviving life, she was a woman deserving of joy. Their children bonded like siblings, sharing toys, secrets, and silly drawings. Ethan invited her to his son's school recital. Nora brought Lily to her first art showcase.